Hi, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic show. My name is Rob from Speakers Corner UK. I will be hosting this evening's, well, here in the UK anyway, this evening's Gin and Tonic show. If you are not aware, both Stopspamming and Ike are not able to continue hosting the show. So I've stepped in, certainly at least temporarily, to do that. And this will be probably the last time that we'll be able to do it at 6 o'clock. It's really too early for me to do it this time of the day. So what I'm going to be looking to do is make it at 8 p.m. UK time. I'll work that out from a UTC point of view so that everybody's aware of it. It's just a little bit too early for me to get on here. I've just had dinner here. It's really hectic, so apologies for that. You may hear some noise in the background here. That's kind of unavoidable, I'm afraid, at the moment. And so what we will do is run through some kind of a show today. Hopefully, we'll take some comments. So I'm looking at the comment section here, so feel free to put in any comments that you have, and we'll just have some kind of a conversation tonight. Hopefully we'll get a couple of people joining in. Feel free to join in on the broadcast. I'm not actually sure, because of it's changed and we haven't been able to get hold of Ike. I'm not sure exactly how you'll be able to join. Hopefully you can join the link and I can add you in. I'm just not sure at this moment in time exactly whether the old link works. So do try it. If there's anybody on here, please do try and connect. See if you can come in live as an additional attendee on this webinar, and let me know in the chat. I'm watching that here to see whether that'll work or not, and then at least we know whether people can join or not, because that may well be a bit of a challenge. So what I'm going to start with today is, if I can just share my screen here, I'm going to actually start by going in and having a look at a few of the articles that I've brought up here, and then also what I hope to do is to be able to go through a video that I was originally going to do on my own channel, and I haven't got round to it, but I will be able to do that here. So a review of a conversation a couple of years ago, actually, as it happens, between two people in Speaker's Corner. So hopefully that will be of some value. So I'm going to share the screen now. Hopefully you can see that. That'll be coming up shortly on your side there as well. And so there's just a few articles here, again, just talking about some of the challenges related to Islam, and in particular some of the things that we can see here. So here's an article where a supervisor told a raped Muslim bus driver that she was westernized, so she wanted it, essentially. A female Muslim bus driver who was raped by her colleague was told that she was westernized, so she wanted it after complaining to her boss, a tribunal has heard. The woman, who cannot be named, claims that she was raped on multiple occasions, but when she finally told her supervisor, she was told to keep quiet. He then bombarded her with questions about her sex life and said her alleged attacker had done nothing wrong, the tribunal was told. The woman only revealed the sex assaults when she had an accident at the depot after failing to apply a handbrake. But she claims that nothing was done about her attacker and that she was sacked for negligence and breaching safety rules. She was then offered another job, which may have involved working nights, but she turned it down after saying that she was too frightened to work unsocial hours. And when she eventually went to the police to report the rapes 3 months later, her supervisor told her that she was westernized, so she wanted it. The woman is now suing the bus firm, her supervisor, and operations director for public interest, disclosure, sex discrimination, and unfair dismissal. So again, we sort of see this creeping sort of Islamization, I guess it is, particularly for women. Again, we'd have to wait to see what happens with this in terms of whether this is a legitimate claim or not. But I've certainly heard of other stories like that. I've even spoken to somebody in particular that I won't mention, who's had a sort of similar experience. So we can often see that when people eventually come forward, they are marginalized, in which case obviously it becomes very challenging for others. So it really makes it difficult for women to come forward when they have had instances like this. So a couple of people saying hi there. Logic beats speculation. How are you? Juice for cheeses and stop spamming. Ah, he's here. Stops. I don't know if you can join or not, just to see whether in fact somebody else can join the hangout or not, because obviously we may have people attempting to join, but I've started this hangout just through the typical YouTube position. So Conja, I'm glad it continues. But anybody who can, yep, there we go. Stops just saying that reality gets in the way sometimes, so it's not so easy. And obviously he's been doing it for quite some while, so hats off to Stops for his consistency. But it'd be great if somebody else can attempt to join the hangout, just to let me know whether you can in fact join, because we were speaking earlier today, and he was basically saying he's not sure whether the live.hangout or whatever the original link was works. So I'm not entirely sure whether people can join this. If you can, please do. Because then I can obviously just add you in as an extra attendee. That's the idea here. I can't see at the moment whether we can do that or not. So I'm just having a look here. No, I'm the only one on at the moment. Great. So that's the first article. Here's another one that I thought was interesting. Triple Talik. I guess that's a particular name for it. The Indian court calls instant divorce system cruel and most demeaning. So a top Indian court has scorned the practice of triple talik, which I think is actually just saying, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. When a man says that to a woman, in some communities, that's accepted as a divorce. And this court is saying it's cruel and demeaning. The Islamabad High Court said the instance of the divorce system prevalent among some Indian Muslims is unconstitutional. Observing that the personal law of any community should not violate the rights of individuals, the court said that the separation method goes against the values of Islam and the Qur'an. Personal laws of any community cannot claim supremacy over the rights granted to individuals by the Constitution, the Justice Minister said. Under the divorce process, the Muslim man tells his wife the Arabic word talik 3 times, which means I divorce you. Though in some practices, unwilling couples separate after a waiting period. Others part ways immediately, depending on their following. The practice has been criticized by rights groups and advocates and activists. The court's observation came in a case filed by a 23-year-old woman named Hina and her husband. Women are increasingly filing complaints that they are being divorced even via social media networks like WhatsApp, Skype, and Facebook. The court added instant divorce that has been depreciated and not followed by all sects of the Muslim community in the country. However, it is cruel and the most demeaning form of divorce practiced by the Muslim community at large. The question which disturbs the court is, should Muslim wives suffer this tyranny for all times? Should their personal law remain so cruel towards these unfortunate wives? Well, I think any of us on here basically would say, no, this is, it's completely non-egalitarian. So, it's definitely, and again, being in India and in certain parts, obviously, they'll perhaps follow what they consider a more strict version of Sharia, shall we say. When I've had debates with people in Speaker's Corner, which I didn't go to today, so unfortunately I don't have any videos to share, but when I have had sort of debates like this, and there's a particular video that maybe I will bring up next time if people are interested, where Mansour, one of the regulars at Speaker's Corner, sort of goes into and attempts to justify what the practices are for women and why they can be divorced, why they can also, have less in terms of when people die and there's a will that's left, why, they get half that of a man, etc. But I think clearly most of us here would say that's absolutely, diabolical. None of us are prepared to accept that. And I see here Juice for Cheeses is saying the hangout.godless.ch does not work for me. The old links are not active anymore. So I'm not sure how anybody can join you. That's going to be a little bit of a problem. I'm wondering, I'm just going to come back to this in a moment. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen just for a moment here. Let me just go out here and stop sharing this for a moment. So we'll just go back to the chat here. Oh, not that. Take away that. There we go. And I want to see if there's a link here somehow that I can give you that you can connect. I'm not sure if there's a way. Links. Here we go. Let's see. YouTube page. No, I think this is just the. Let me pop that in there. I'm guessing that's just a link to the actual video itself. It'd be great if somebody actually attempts to connect here, but I'm not sure exactly how you would. Yeah, it's just a bit of a challenge as to how you're actually going to connect to, so I can have some people to talk to, because that would be great. Otherwise, it might just be a much shorter version. No, that's just the video stops is saying there. So I'm just looking to see if there's any way that I can show you or allow you to see. No, I cannot see a way here to allow people in. There's nothing on here that sort of gives me the opportunity to link to this. I'm just looking here to see if there's some way that I can do this. I wasn't able to test this. As I say, I've just come back today, so it's kind of last minute, so I do apologize in advance here. It is a little bit last minute for me getting in today. So at least we've got something here, but whether we can have any sort of conversation as to whether other people can join me or not, it would be great if that's possible. But at the moment, I'm just not seeing a way to be able to do that, which is a bit of a shame, because trying to do this all on my own is not going to be great. Take the top address URL. Okay, if I give you the top address URL, let me try that. Copy and paste that. Here we go. Let me pop this into the chat here. So that's the URL from the very top. If somebody can just attempt to, even if you just come on stops for a moment and then disconnect, that'll be great, just to check whether that's working or not. That will at least allow me to know whether we can have any additional people in here. So while you're attempting to do that, I'm going to go back here and share my screen and swap over here. So that was obviously with the this instant divorce system, which I think, as we'd all agree, is pretty ridiculous and awful. I'm going to move on to another one which I thought was interesting, particularly here in the UK. I don't know if you've seen this or not. Zayn Malik, who's part of the singing group, the name escapes me at the moment. I'm sure people will remind me who it is. Obviously, he left this group of 5 young guys, and his family's been subjected apparently to death threats from trolls, whoever that may be, for disgracing Islam. I'm sure that if I spoke to most people in Speaker's Corner, they would, for example, tell me no, it's absolutely fine. Although, you never know, somebody may actually say to me, no, that this is, putting up a Christmas tree if you are Muslim is some bad thing that, in fact, there is some punishment out there for. But Zayn Malik's family, Zayn Malik, should I say, his family has been subjected to death threats after the singer's younger sister posted a snap of the family's Christmas tree on Instagram. Vile comments were posted by nasty trolls on 14-year-old Safia's, if I've pronounced that correctly, Safia's account after she shared the festive snap warning that dual faith family of retribution. So again, maybe other people know more than I do as to which family members are Muslims and which are not. There we go, the X One Direction, that's the name, it escaped me, the X One Direction star. Mum was born a Christian while his dad follows Islam, meaning that he celebrates both Christmas and Muslim festivals such as Eid. His sister's post was littered with ugly, disgusting comments and called the 23-year-old singer's family a disgrace to the faith over their celebration of Christmas. Safia has now removed the comments from her Instagram post and now only has a simple emoji comment. The post has still attracted 12,300 likes. So, of course, that was the photo that she posted, which is, just an innocuous picture of a Christmas tree. And that's obviously the young lady herself. A source close to her parents told the Daily Star, Christmas is very important to Trisha because she was brought up a Christian. The hate that Safia received was just disgusting. Last night, Zayn made a rare red carpet appearance hours after releasing a new song with Taylor Swift. The former boy bander has taken a step back from the limelight, etc. So, again, one of these things. And again, I will put this to some of the Muslims next time I'm in Speaker's Corner, which is probably going to be about 3 weeks from now, coming up with, various holidays, etc. And then I'll ask them this question, so what happens if a mother is, Christian and a father is a Muslim, and the family celebrate both. Is there something in, Islam or any of the Sharia or anything else that prevents that, or they're not allowed to do that, or
Yes.
what is the situation?
Yeah, Sharia prevents it. Sharia says
There you
that
go.
Islam has preference.
Oh, it does. Okay, great. So you're in. Well, welcome, Stops. I'm glad you're in there. So obviously that long link work, did it?
The long one work, yeah. That is the URL that you need to get into the Hangout.
Okay, so obviously I'll need to look at making that easier, or obviously just posting at the moment I start the Hangout, just posting that at the top of the chat for those that want to join. But obviously the original way was a lot easier.
Yeah, unfortunately. And that, well, Abu Scandal has also made it. Scandinavia.
Let's see. Cool. So that was that one. I'll come back to the other ones if we need to. So I'll just go back there and we can just have a conversation. I'll come back to a couple of others if that's worthwhile doing. So I'm going to just.
Well, maybe it's worthwhile pointing out here right now that if you, for example, you go to a court in the UK and you are married legally under the UK law, then you have a different set of rules than what you do under Sharia. So depending on what it is that you want to achieve, some people then simply ignore the English courts and go straight to a Sharia court because they know exactly that Sharia is going to tell them the Muslim father gets the children, the Christian mother can go take a hike. So this is what you have in this parallel judiciary, if you want to call it that.
Yes, and maybe you know a little bit more about it, but I'm sort of surprised, and well, not really actually surprised as to why the UK allows us in any way. What is it that's preventing them from clamping down on this entirely? Is it the fear of being called Islamophobic or bigoted or racist? Those sort of shit type comments that stick to anybody the moment they get thrown. What is it that prevents them from going, this is the UK law, you follow this law, or you find somewhere else?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all. I think I think it is that they are afraid that if they do close it down entirely, which they should do by all rights, that they will be called Islamophobes, number one, and number two, that there's going to be some sort of an uproar by the Muslims who feel that they are being given the raw end of the deal if they go to a normal British court, because they don't accept man-made laws. They accept only God-made laws, which they think is by their God. And if you stop them receiving the legal aspects by their God, then you are stopping them from practicing their religion. This is how they see that, even though this is the point where you start realizing that Islam has very little to do with religion, but is more a political ideology, because exactly this is what the consequences are.
Yes, yeah. And it's just sort of unfathomable to me that people are, the government, etc., is not more clear on this. You follow the laws of this land, whether they quote man-made or not, which they are, and some people could argue that it's based on Judeo-Christian laws. Again, whether that's borrowed from the Bible, one could argue, but I think it's become a lot more secular in any case. But that's the law of the land, and so that takes precedence over everything else, including your feelings, whether you believe it or not. And obviously, if you wish to live by another parallel legal system, then obviously you're welcome to do that in countries that support that. But here we support this. I mean, Australia is the only one that I know of. And again, you could let me know if there's other countries, Western countries, that have said that sort of fairly outrightly. But I can't imagine that happening here, even with a conservative government. Oh, he's popped off there. So that for me is a really strange thing. And then I've just had a comment here, interestingly enough, from BJ Price, who said, this reminds me that there was an Ahmadi in Ireland who got killed for posting Happy Easter. And of course, there was an Ahmadi killed here as well that made headlines. I think it was in Scotland, if I remember correctly, for wishing people a Merry Christmas. So, yes, well, Ahmadis are considered, are not considered Muslims by the traditional Sunni Muslims. So they clearly, I don't know if they're considered apostates or they're just considered, non-Muslims. Again, Stops can tell us whether that's what the case is there.
No, I can't.
Oh, okay.
Because it's completely confusing. Like, for example, Saudi Arabia, KSA, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, has introduced the Christian calendar. So, all of a sudden you have an alternative legal system in Saudi Arabia, which is based on Christian values. So it's quite weird to see this. So yes, there are countries that take, even though they are under Sharia, will allow this mishmash because it's stupid. I mean, they are so fixed on their Friday, but I remember a couple of years ago, it was customary that everything was on a Friday. So Friday was off and that was it. Then they started adding, well, we need a second day because the West is having a second day off. So they introduced it that now the Saturday is off. So now the first weekday is the Sunday and you have Friday and Saturday off. So it's quite strange, but they don't go and say, okay, Wednesday or Thursday and Friday off. No, now it's Friday and Saturday. So it's quite weird.
Isn't that quite a recent thing?
It is a very.
Oh, lost you there. He'll be back in a moment. But I did hear that as well, that the Saudis said...
What was it you said about... did you say anything about Ahmadiyya, if they are apostates? Or?
Yes, I was asking whether they are considered apostates or they're just considered non-Muslims. What is the traditional Sunni view?
I don't remember exactly what the ruling says, but I think, to give someone the ruling apostate or murtad, then you have to be Muslims.
Okay, so you'd have to be considered a Muslim originally before you could be given that. So since they aren't considered Muslims, I guess they're considered non-Muslims then?
Aren't they considered like Muslims in the beginning who then go astray because they originally went and prayed to the Qur'an and accepted the right things and then were led astray by Mr. Ahmad?
We've lost Abu there, I think. I think that was directed to Abu. We're not hearing Abu. I don't know if you are attempting to speak there.
Because it's quite weird with Ahmadiyyas. And unfortunately, we had a guy who was prepared to come on and explain everything, and then somehow this never materialized. And which is a great pity because I don't even know and I don't fully understand how they function. Because you can't have Muhammad as the last prophet and then have the Ahmads as the last prophet. So I don't know how they actually justify this within the sect or the cult or whatever you want to call this. I don't know. But it's quite weird that they would follow what Muhammad did, said, and thought according to the Sunnah to a certain extent, but then follow the interpretation of their own prophet. This is why they're then called apostates. So it's quite weird. So
I don't think, but that's how you have to make a difference. Like, I don't think they are Muslims at all. That's the point. I think they are just considered to be because they are born with that faith and they believe that this Ahmadiyya guy is the prophet, and that is kufr immediately. So they weren't even Muslims to begin with.
Okay, and that they worship the Quran or follow the Quran is, I don't know, you just ignore that?
Yeah, but certain sects that, like, it's the same thing with this sect that President Assad, his sect is also like too far away to even be considered. They are not even Muslims to begin with, so you can't really say that they are. But then you have like more grayish areas, like are Shias or Ithna Sharia, the most common sect in Iran. Are they considered to be Muslims at all? And I think the majority of scholars think that you can't make takfir on all of them, even if they say and do things that are.
And the Baha'i?
I don't remember exactly the ruling for everything, and there is a so-called ikhtilaf also. So you can see this among like jihadis, for example, like Ibn Taymiyyah. This he didn't make takfir on all Shias. He gave them the benefit of the doubt, so to speak. And I think also Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. No. The other, not Abu. I think Abu Musab al-Zarqawi started to make takfir on Shias on all of them, But there is another sheikh that is older. What's his name? Al-Maqdisi. He didn't do. He doesn't do takfir on all of them. So there is even ikhtilaf among jihadis, like the most hardcore jihadis. I can say that the state doesn't like Al-Maqdisi anymore.
There's so many different sects, isn't there? I mean, again, because I don't know it as well, I go and speak more on the big topics when I go down to Speaker's Corner. So obviously I'm aware of the sort of three, I guess, which is Sunni, Shia, and Ahmadi, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it sounds like there are many other smaller sects or subsects of those.
But are Ahmadiyya so big that they are third sect? I think that's a very small sect.
Oh, is it really? Maybe that's just they've got in the news, and so from a Western point of view, we hear about them mostly because they are, targeted, I guess, and so you hear about them. But yeah, you're right. You're probably right. I don't know what the numbers are. I'd have to look that up and see.
I don't know myself, but I think they are a very small sect. Most Muslims are Sunnis.
Yes, that's right. And occasionally, although I don't record them, and maybe I should, because again, it might be of interest if they're speaking English, occasionally in Speaker's Corner, you'll have a Sunni and a Shia have a conversation. In fact, I think there might be one or two recordings floating around where they are actually speaking English and they are having some kind of a conversation. But virtually all the people I speak to, they are all Sunni Muslims. But occasionally, as I said, they'll have a conversation with a Shia. So maybe it might be worth me listening in to actually understand what's the difference. What is their big, point that they disagree on?
I mean, I think one of the best things if you want to understand the Shia sect is that you read about Persian history and about Zoroastrianism, and you see how they kind of has cross-fertilized each other.
Yeah.
So I think Dionysus just joined us.
Yes, and just to reiterate the point you said, Silent Walkers basically said in the chat there, they meaning, I guess, Sunni Muslims, I'm guessing, regard the Ahmad as a prophet, making Muhammad no longer the last one. So that would obviously be the Ahmadiyyas themselves. They obviously regard him as a prophet after Muhammad, and so Muhammad wasn't the last one. So it seems like they follow a lot of Muhammad's teaching, but just don't accept that he's the last prophet.
If I can just chime in here.
Sure.
Yeah, the Ahmadiyya, the thing that distinguishes them is that they have actually abrogated the concept of armed jihad. So, and they're the only sect that does that, because all the schools of Islam agree that Islam has a doctrine of warfare against unbelievers in order to subjugate them to the law of Islam. The Ahmadiyya are the only sect, well, if you count them as a sect, that doctrine has been abrogated by the founder of their sect. Since they've been rejected, they are rejected by the mainstream Muslim society.
Abrogated what? The Quran?
No, abrogated the concept of armed jihad. So he wrote a book, actually, the founder of their sect. His name was Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, and he wrote a pamphlet. I'm not sure if it's a book or a pamphlet, I forget, but he wrote a work. And if I can just give me 1 second. He wrote a book and talked about, I believe it was called The British Government and Jihad, and he was talking about, because he said something that about the days of warfare and all that stuff is over, that jihad will now be a sort of spiritual struggle. So when mainstream Muslims come to you and basically lie to you and say that jihad is a internal struggle, blah blah blah. Well, the Ahmadiyya actually believe that, from what I understand. They don't believe in this warfare against unbelievers. But
are they also amongst the group who only pray 3 times?
To my knowledge, no. They claim themselves that they fall under the Sunni category, if you can believe that. But as far as I'm concerned, they still believe in the 5 pillars, from what I understand. It's just that they believe in some.
Strange, yeah.
Yeah, after Muhammad, and even within that sect, there's 2 divisions. There's the Lahore sect, which believed that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was not a prophet, but was just somebody who came down after him, but did not, was not a prophet. But then the mainstream Ahmadiyya say no, that he was a prophet, and that he was the second coming of Jesus Christ. So even within their whole division, they still have even more. To me, Islam is very it's very schizophrenic, because it can't agree. Although,
TJ, we are losing you every so often here, just to let you know. So we hear some of you, and then you disappear after a little while.
is that better?
Okay, keep speaking, because it's just like you're speaking fine, your volume is fine, but then you'll just disappear for 3 or 4 seconds, and then you come back, so we miss crucial sentences in between.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries. Obviously, it's all upload dependent and internet dependent, I guess. And if you're on a Wi-Fi and you're moving or not in a good spot, then you'll.
Nah, he's just in
connections.
Madagascar.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I mean, overall, I mean, when you do speak to Muslims, because I've dealt with these kind of people who blatantly lie and who blatantly will try to deceive you, is just bring up chapter 9. Bring up any verse in chapter 9, but it's chapter 9, verse 5, 929, 973, 111, whatever, because they'll deny abrogation, that such a concept exists, when so many scholars have said yes, it does exist. So chapter 9 is where this whole concept of warfare with unbelievers, that is an essential component. That's how it spread ultimately, through warfare. And anybody who denies that is either lying to you or is ignorant.
So what you're saying is that the chapter 9 abrogates the peaceful verses, the previous peaceful verses.
Anything in the Medina period abrogates. Mm-hmm. Specifically, because let's not forget, the Quran is not in chronological order. It's the only book, or one of the few books, that is not in chronological order. It starts with the longest chapter and then ends with the shortest chapter. So it's makes no sense. But if you read it from first chapter to last chapter, you'll see how the tone changes.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of Bill Warner. Is that a fellow in the US that any of you are familiar with?
Yes,
I think everybody does. Yeah.
Yeah. So what he's done and what I've got from him, that again, you guys obviously all know this. He's got the abridged version of the Quran that he's reordered. It's obviously taken him a significant amount of time in chronological order with the verses, and then the backstory behind it, where Muhammad was, why these verses came up, where they came up, etc. So it's very useful for me as a beginner, so to speak, to understand how did this happen, because like you say, the Quran is almost not incomprehensible, but it's much harder to follow just in its quote random order. And that's something that I'll mention. Remind me, because I've had a conversation about that at Speaker's Corner as well.
Should add that this is according to later traditions, the Sunni tradition. So, I mean, we can't even be sure historically what verse really came first. But that's another thing. As a legal thing, it doesn't really matter. It's true that the later surahs abrogate the first ones.
Yes, yeah. And of course, there's occasionally this. Sorry, carry on there, Cheese.
Oh, sorry to jump in that late, but there was an interesting point mentioned about the controversy between the Ahmadiyya having the last prophet and Muhammad being the last prophet. And as a totally layman injection to that, during the countless debates online, I've heard a debate about Muhammad being the last prophet or being the last apostle. So they used the difference between the two words, Nabi and Rasul, and argued that
But that
Muhammad
doesn't
was
work.
Muhammad
Doesn't
was
work.
both.
In Arabic, it's like وَخَاتَمَ Nabi, so Nabi is the prophet.
Exactly. Rasul.
Okay, so they mean that he is Rasul.
So they meant that Muhammad was, well, I'm not sure if that was actually an Ahmadiyya point, but they insisted on Muhammad being both Rasul and Nabi, while he was the last Nabi, but not the last Rasul, or something like that. Or maybe vice versa. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
I'm sure
yeah.
it can't be last Nabi. Because
Yeah, I think they interjected two terms. I think that's what they're.
Yeah, I didn't quite, I couldn't really follow how it worked because I just joined the conversation.
Which
finding out.
Which doesn't make sense, because the difference between a Nabi and a Rasul is that a Rasul, or messenger, is one that brings a text like the Injil or the Qur'an. And as far as I know, I don't think this Ahmadiyya guy didn't bring any text, so he can't be a Rasul.
Yeah, well, I don't remember the details exactly, but
I mean, this is like, if you look at the things like in an objective way, I find it kind of these things kind of dishonest. I mean, if Islam would be true at all, I think it's quite obvious that it's the Sunni version that would be true.
If it's possible to know that, yeah. If it's, they are the majority, so I mean.
Yeah, they are majority.
So,
but it depends on where you look at it, because I remember that Klingshaw mentioned that in the Middle East, the Sunnis were not in the majority at all, but it was more like 50-50. If you take away the subcontinent and Indonesia and so if you focus on the
there
places,
were periods in history maybe when I don't have the statistics now, but you can say like there were periods in time when like you had, like, for example, Dawlat al-Fatimiyya and so on.
But this is not the point. I joined the conversation about this Rasul and Nabi controversy because I wanted to know how exactly Islam derives that Muhammad is to be the last of all prophets, the final prophet to come. And I was quoted with a verse that was something that Muhammad is the seal of the prophets.
You know the story when Muhammad married what was it? His sons, not his sons. What was it?
Foster son's
wife. That is the same verse.
Yeah, I forget which verse. Yeah, but you're right, because before that verse was revealed, he couldn't marry her, and all of a sudden the verse came down, and then
So it's quite وخاتما ما كان
So
I was half of that verse once upon a time, but I don't remember it. It ends with ولكن كان خاتم الأنبياء or something like that.
it's 33 verse 40, I think.
33 verse 40.
40.
If
about,
anyone,
yeah.
but if it's used for Jesus, can you look for that verse, and I can talk trash in the meanwhile. Okay.
Probably look at
That's what I'm doing.
You should probably look at like commentary along with it, just to be sure.
Well, I've got a quick question for you. On the Ahmadiyyas, do they want Sharia, a form of Sharia implemented, and if so, how strict are they for non-believers?
That I couldn't tell you. I don't think there's ever been an Ahmadiyya state or an Ahmadiyya caliphate or anything like that. So I mean, if they believe in God's law, then I guess that if they truly believe in if they believe that God's law is superior to man-made law, then naturally they would want it in some way, shape, or form. That's the best answer that I could give you. As far as what is what that would look like, as to how far it would go. I mean, if the penal code was established and the social order was established, I mean, it would be similar to what ISIS would look like, but it would be. I mean, it would depend on how far they would want it. Family law and not penal code that it wouldn't be as severe, I guess you could say. So it would just depend to the.
Well, I'll definitely ask next time I come across an Ahmadiyya at Speaker's Corner. I will ask him some of these questions, because the few that I've heard of or had brief interactions with seem very nice people. They don't come across as some of, and I don't say all Muslims, some of the more fundamentalist sort of Sunni or Shia sects. So that's why I was just wondering whether they, even if it's a small sect, what their tolerance level is compared to the other sects.
Well, I mean, I guess a good way to gauge that would be asking about chapter 5, verse 33, talking about chopping off from like the opposite sides of limbs, and then crucifying people if they wage war against the messenger. Just ask them about that. that'd be a pretty good example. I mean, there's so many verses that you could pull up. And either they'll try to contextualize it, saying that it was for that time period, and then the literalist Muslim will say, well, no, that's those punishments still apply for today. So Muslims come in all different varieties, but Islam is clear that these things are valid for all.
Here's the
Yes.
verse, if you want to hear.
Go ahead.
Muhammad is not the father of any man among you, but he is the messenger of Allah and the seal of the prophets. ولكن كان رسول الله وخاتم النبيين. In Arabic.
So would one interpret that to mean that he's the final, because seal meaning final, closes up, finishes off type of thing? That would be their interpretation.
And the word is Nabi, not Rasul.
If you do find somebody on Speaker's Corner, do talk to them, because I tried to get somebody who can actually explain this in detail. I've never been able to find anybody. It's so confusing.
I will definitely ask them, and I'll say, look, come on with make yourself invisible, and just come on, because we really want to understand it better. We're not necessarily there, although we may ask you a few tough questions, but we want to understand your viewpoint, because it's you're obviously in a very small minority, and it's not clear what your views are. I mean, obviously you may not speak for everybody, but I will do my best if I can find an Ahmadiyya to ask him to come onto the show, send him a link, get some details, and have him come on here more as a friendly conversation than, okay, you're coming into the lion's den, so to speak. But again, I'll try and find somebody that's open to do that, where they're not outed in any way.
Let me just explain, just in case somebody's just joined or somebody's wondering. I've had to sort of give up Jinn Tonic show, and Rob has been wonderful and has been incredibly helpful to jump in here. So Jinn Tonic show is still up and running. We're not sure in what format, what time, and blah, blah, blah this is going to be. It's just that reality has caught up with me, so I've had to give it a miss at the moment. That's why I'm not in the chair at the moment with the Jinn Tonic show logo, but with my own logo, just in case you're confused and you're wondering, just as an explanation.
Great, thanks, Stops. And yes, I said it at the beginning, but a lot of people obviously have joined later. I can't do 6 o'clock. I managed to do it now, and I've got the family out of the way and so forth. But that's sort of dinner time. 6 p.m. UTC is 6 p.m. UK time. So what I'm likely to do is make it 8 p.m. UK time, because that gives me an opportunity, whether I'm working or whether I come back from Speaker's Corner, then I can still host the show. Obviously, if there's somebody else out there that feels that they could host the show earlier and can get on, and then I can join them, I'm very happy, and I'd love to have a co-host if that's possible.
And what do you need to host? So do you need is it stable internet connection, or what else?
Yes, ideally a stable internet connection, and then give you the login. I can set up each week the Google Hangout and you log in and you just go live until we can find a way to make a nice short link. You'd have to post a long link like I've done into the chat, and then I join you when I come, when I get back. If you want to start at 6 p.m., then it might be challenging for me. So even if you want to host it, you're more than welcome to do that. It just means that I may not get on until 7 possibly, and if I'm working late on weekends, which I sometimes do, I might not get on until 8 o'clock. So that's why I wanted to push the time back so that I can get in if I was going to be the sole host. But if you're able to get in and you can start earlier, that's absolutely fine.
What I was thinking about, this 18 UTC, that time wasn't really the original time. I was actually thinking about making it more like Middle Eastern friendly.
That's what we had. That's why we changed it, because it didn't work.
Yeah, but I was thinking okay, you can refute this. Maybe this is a very stupid idea. But what if to have it on Saturday instead? Because that is like the Sunday in the Middle East.
Yeah, we tried all that and it didn't work. I mean, I remember Klingshaw, he had to get up 7 o'clock in the morning, which he really
No, not
managed
7
to do.
o'clock, but you can take it like...
No, he was in Australia, so he had to get up 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, but do we have so many Australian guys here now? Like, if you have like Saturday 15 p.m., then it's like evening in the US, and it's... No, it isn't in the US. It's morning in the
early
US.
morning.
Early morning, yeah.
Early morning in the US.
6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday.
Abu, what time is it there for you? I won't ask where you are, but what time is it for you now?
For me?
Yes. Is it late afternoon, evening, or
it's
night?
Berlin time.
Oh, okay.
So
you're only an hour behind then.
but that was, I was
Hour
thinking,
ahead, should I
if you
say.
have it on Saturday, then it doesn't there are other shows like the German show that ICAS, for example.
No, that stopped.
It stopped too?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, it was just an idea. I was thinking make it more Middle Eastern friendly, have it on Saturday, maybe 15, 16, 17 p.m. or something.
Yeah, I mean, if sorry, carry on.
It was just an idea. It's not important.
I mean, if it's all been tested already, at the moment we've got sort of 17.
No, we have not tested Saturday afternoon.
Oh, okay. That will be a challenge for me because I'm fine on a Saturday if I'm not working, but part of the nature of my job is unexpected and then working long weekends. So starting at sort of 9 and working till 6 or 7. So, and I don't know when that's going to happen. So for me, it would have to be outside of that time if I'm going to be the sole host or the main host. But if you're able to get involved, then obviously...
What do you need to do to be like, if I set it up with a stable internet connection, what do I have to do?
Well, obviously, have some content, have something that we're going to talk about, and then hopefully you'd have people joining you. Obviously, I think one of the difficulties will be that people know that this is the sort of time, so they got it in their diary, they'll come in. So we may not get any viewers or very few viewers when you make a big change to a different day and a different time. Again, obviously Stops has tested that. And so, it may be a case of people getting used to that. I just think, and so the only way is to test it, I guess, again, if it hasn't been done, especially on a Saturday. But for me, for example, a Saturday afternoon, you might be out with the family and so forth. So I think for me, it depends. And obviously that's the problem with a worldwide audience is it's different for everybody. To me, it depends on the hosts, because obviously if the hosts aren't there, there won't be a show. And so, obviously you want as many people as you possibly can. But if the host can't make it, then we're a bit challenged to run the show.
Yeah.
I think for me in the evenings is better. Later is better for me because then I can make sure, the family's quiet, they've all had dinner and they've all gone to bed, etc. And then I can focus my time. But if, as I say, if you're a co-host, for example, the other option is you could run this more than once a week. So it could be 2 shows where you do one. And I'll have more to talk about when I come back from Speaker's Corner. I haven't gone today and I won't be going for a couple of weeks now. So I'll probably be going again early in the new year.
So I don't think we should do it more than once a week, because if we have Friday, we can test Friday too. That's also a good day. That's like the Saturday in the middle.
Exactly. So why not use Friday evening then?
Friday evening
Yeah,
could work.
Friday.
Yeah, that would work for me for sure. Yeah.
Then we're probably gonna get a lot of drunk people, but maybe that's the same thing with.
Well, we can always kick them off if they come on.
We can handle that. It's okay.
Yes.
No,
yeah,
but Friday
exactly.
is quite good. Friday is.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah,
That's like
even if
the
I'm working.
Experiment. It doesn't really matter. See what happens. See what works. The only problem is that the US Friday evening cannot participate because then it's Friday, lunchtime.
Friday lunchtime. Yeah. Okay.
Friday evening. Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, so depending
The
where
US
whereabouts in the
guys.
US it is. It sort of depends how many people are from the US or North America.
Yeah, this is exactly the problem that you just sketched out.
But I mean, like, I think it's more important. I'm sorry to say this, TJ, or I don't know. Maybe in the US is important. I think you can. Let's see. When is it? Yeah, it's lunch in the US. It's true.
I mean, for who is it a problem to do it this time in the evening? Let's say 7 or 8 p.m. on a Sunday. Is that a problem for yourself, or is there anybody else? So people just come on at this time, but a bit later. Is there?
No, but most of us go up and work the day after, or maybe we
On
have
the
to
Monday,
go
you
up
mean,
early.
yes, yeah.
Maybe we have to go up early in the morning.
Yeah. I mean, a Friday could work. So we could.
And it's also a working day in the Muslim world. It's like the Monday in the Middle East.
Oh, right. You mean on the Sunday? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm happy to do next week's show on a Friday evening. That can work. Especially Abu, if you're able to co-host. So between the two of us,
yeah, Fridays
have something running. Then that's great. Because if I'm not available or you're not, one of us can always do something, and there will be that actually will work as well, because then I would have been to Speaker's Corner on the Sunday before. There'll be 5 days where I'll posted some videos. I'll have something interesting maybe to talk about, a conversation I witnessed or I was involved in, and so again I'll have something that I can speak about a few days after. And if you guys are subscribed to the Speaker's Corner UK channel, you might have watched those videos. Maybe there's something that you'd like to discuss, because I think those are quite interesting. It sounds like many of the topics here have been discussed already, and I think it's always interesting to hear what people have got to say. And again, especially at Speakers Corners, because it's traditionally, especially on the Muslim side, it's Sunni Muslims who are, I guess, what most people would consider moderate Muslims. Whether I'm not sure, and I'm very charitable in the sense that I think they believe what they're saying until it's proven otherwise, that they are practicing, is it takfir, where they say one thing but don't mean it, or they,
Taqiyya. Yeah, taqiyya is
yes. So I'm not sure whether that's the case. So I would go, okay, this is what they actually believe, and so
I don't think they are consciously doing it unless they are a Shia. But but it would be interesting to test it. But maybe we should take a time exactly so the guys that want to join the Jinn Tonic show on the lunchtime, because if you have a 9 to 5 job, maybe we should make it between 12 and 13 in the US, so they have a chance.
Yes, there's some comments in the comment section there about it being a Euro UK ME. I'm not sure what ME is. I guess it's sort of Middle Eastern, sort of centric show. Sunday 8 p.m. guys, everybody will be home then. I guarantee it. Well, that's true.
Let's
people
ask Donald Trump.
Yeah, I'm sure that people in that time zone
now, if we have it 8 o'clock Berlin time, then it's going to be very late for the US guys. So if they are working the next day, it's not that US friendly.
It's the opposite, Abu.
What?
It's the opposite.
Oh, yeah, opposite. Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
So it'll be only for them. It's fine.
Sorry,
it's only really for you or
but
people
for the
in the Middle East
guys. We don't have any Japanese.
No, I think we have to. To me personally, we need to focus on when we can do it, but also who is the main audience? Is the main audience Euro, Middle Eastern, UK type thing? And we have some US visitors, and hopefully they can make it in the morning. In which case, Sunday is good. But we can do, here's what we could do. We could test it on a Friday night at 8 p.m. and we could test it on a Sunday night at 8 p.m. See how many people come in, see what the comments are like, and then, go with that. Because obviously we like, and obviously if it works for both of us, but we'd like to have as many viewers as we can, because I doubt most people will go and watch this as a recording. Some people might, but I guess you want to be on the show, you want to be able to comment, etc. So more people are likely to watch the live show than watch a recording.
Yeah. Okay,
well, the only one that I know is from East is Ace.
No, but yeah, but look, we can't make it perfect. I think Friday night is that's okay. I think. Then yes, but there's not that many Muslims in the US anyway, if you think about it. Compared to the Middle East and Europe, there are a lot more Muslims here.
Yeah, but I mean, we're looking at the moment sort of 18 or 19 viewers, and I suspect most of them are not Muslim anyway. So I guess it's not. Is the viewership supposed to? Is the main viewership Muslim, or is it non-Muslims that are on here?
Well, the original target was, but it turned out that Muslims, they will watch on the slide just to find out what it is that we're talking about. But they don't really follow, and they might as well watch the recording. But I doubt that you're going to have many Muslims come in and discuss this live.
Well, which is a shame, really.
It increases the likelihood a little bit.
Well, let's test it for next week. So let's test next week, Friday, 8 o'clock. See how many people are on, see how that works. And then we can make a call and go, okay, that did work or didn't. I'm looking at the numbers here. I can see the viewers coming and going. And then, the other option is to test it on a Sunday at 8 p.m. And see if that works. So then at least we've had 2 sessions that we can test and see if one of them works better than the other.
Yeah. Nice.
Cool. So what I'd love to, unless anybody else has got something to talk about, I've got a fairly short video section here on a conversation that happened actually about 2 years ago with one of my famous interlocutors, Shabir Yusuf, and another young fellow that I thought might be interesting to go through. I actually made some notes because I was going to do this on my own channel, and I got so much negativity from the one that I did. I went, is this worth it? It was downvoted, dislikes, etc., etc. And it was all, again, Muslims who, don't see a bigger picture. Everything is, we're the victim type of thing. And so, generally the response was, oh, you're being disingenuous. He's not here to answer your rebuttal. And I said, well, that's not the point. I'm here to show where errors were made by myself and him. This particular conversation I have that I was interested in doing tonight is not between me and him. So I wanted to make it separate as an outside person looking in and going, okay, what was said here? Is there any errors here? So I don't know if that would be of interest to you guys. I can sort of run it and then stop it and have a comment. You guys can jump in and let's see if it, because it's a short one. It's about sort of, if I remember correctly, 7 or 8 minutes worth of actual conversation. But there's a lot that's said in there that, if you listen closely, there'll be quite a bit of things that are being said there that you can pick up. And hopefully that won't take too long. And let's see if that's useful to people that are watching. Everybody's muted themselves, so I'm not sure if there's agreement there. I'll assume that's okay with some people.
Yeah, so, go for it.
Right, let me just make sure I can find it here so that I've got it ready to go. And then I will be able to...
Is my mic better, by the way?
Yes, I mean, your mic is clear, but what happens is you'll be talking and then you're back again like this and you're talking very clearly and then you're back again. And so it's just like you get lost. It's not that you're not clear. It's just as if somebody's put a gag over your mic and then they've taken it off again. So you are crystal clear in that sense. So let me just bring up this particular... by the way, I don't know if any of you are interested in presuppositionalism, or some of you may have heard of it. But if you are interested in it, which is basically just, and occasionally a Muslim has come to Speaker's Corner and borrowed the Christian, because this is very much a Christian sort of apologetic, Christian point of view of, they presuppose God exists, and without God, you can't know anything. You've got no intelligibility. It's basically, doing things back to front. and it's actually, it sounds ridiculous on the face of it, and to a point it is, but it's actually quite hard to refute. And it's a very interesting thing that I actually stopped watching. I was watching a live event. If anybody's interested, look up a guy called Alex Malpass. He's a philosopher. I'm going to post it in the main chat here. Just as a side note, look up that guy, go and subscribe to his channel, go and watch. He's a philosopher, he's a non-believer, and he tackles this sort of, among other people, he's one of the guys that's tackling sort of really good presuppositions, not sort of your Imrans from Speaker's Corner who try to borrow it and don't really know it, and trying to use the Scythe and Bruggencate approach. He uses a much better, and he speaks to sort of much more knowledgeable people.
Just to piggyback off that, what you were saying, I've noticed though, that a lot of atheists, particularly in the Western world, when they let go of Christianity or they let go of God in general, they still hold on to Christian values, things like compassion, empathy, things like that. If you no longer believe in God, how can you hold on to that same morality? I've just always wondered about that. You have egalitarians, utilitarians, you have Epicureans and stuff like that. To me, it's just Christianity in drag, and I don't understand why a lot of these atheists hold on to Christian values when they.
So Nietzsche said that he compared it to the shadow. In Buddhism, there's a story of Buddha that the Buddha's shadow remained on the cave wall or whatever after he died for a long time. It's we are steeped in the Judeo-Christian morality for so many thousands of years.
Exactly, and poll after poll, poll after poll has shown that most atheists tend to be on the left. What can be the basis for any sort of equality? It just boggles my mind. Any sort of compassion.
I think it will take a long time. It will take.
It just boggles my mind.
And I noticed that as well. Whenever I come across somebody in Speaker's Corner that has converted either to Islam, for example, or to Christianity, and on the rare occasions when I speak to them, I ask them, well, how come when you deconverted, you didn't look at the other choice, which obviously seemingly to me and to some of us is the obvious choice of non-belief. It feels like they have to go to another belief system that has a deity of some kind. Presumably, and I haven't asked them, presumably.
Yeah, Arabs often do that. Arabs that are murtads from, they often go to Christianity for some reason.
Yes, I guess the thought of unbelief.
Yeah, it's too big step to go from. But I think what TJ is talking here, he means more from the morality. How comes that you have guys are atheists, but
Dawkins,
still
prime example.
Sorry, what was that? We lost you there.
Richard Dawkins, I just bring him up as a prime
Richard
example.
Dawkins is there are probably even better examples, but Richard Dawkins is someone that he is fully atheist, but he still kind of more or less consciously clings to the Judeo-Christian ethics.
In what way?
You can argue about that. I know. I'm not sure he would agree with that, but in general, I think that it's true that people, even though people know that the game is up for religion, they still cling on to the morality of it or the ethics of it.
That's a very interesting topic, and of course it's one for me. So I'll hold on the video for a moment, because this is sort of a big bar for me. Apart from whether something's true or not, let's assume that, for example, Allah was actually true, or the ideology of Islam is true. I would very begrudgingly accept that it was true if there was overwhelming evidence or incredibly good reasons for it. What I wouldn't do, though, is accept, for me, a God that's not unconditionally loving. For me, that is a bar. My morality is set as, if you are an all-powerful being, then one of the number one attributes of greatness would be unconditional love. In other words, there's nothing that we could do that could possibly in any sense hurt him anyway, if it is a him or her or whatever the case is. So what justification is there for eternal punishment? So it's a human conception that we need to, there needs to be justice amongst us as humans, which I totally accept. But what justification is there for, let's call it incredibly powerful, because I don't subscribe to omniscience or omnipotence. I think it's an incoherent term. I know a lot of people do, but so what is it? What is the defense for somebody to say that that a God is what was the word that I heard at Speaker's Corner? It's a just God. The term is just, and that for them is the moral compass. As long as God is just, which means punishment of quote evildoers, that for them is morally acceptable.
Yeah, but that would be a metaphysical punishment. So you would have second world. And coming back to your first point, I mean, if there is a creator, or if there is a grand consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, why doesn't it follow that perhaps it's looking down and just laughing at us, laughing at our suffering, or taking joy in it? I mean, what stops you from it doesn't follow, because if there is a creator, if there is something, why can't it be somebody who is taking pleasure in this, taking pleasure in human suffering, taking pleasure and doesn't care? I mean, it could be, it could be a plethora of things. Maybe it's just indifferent. Maybe it can't do anything. Maybe it doesn't care. Maybe it just doesn't know. I mean, it could be a plethora of things. It just doesn't follow that this God has to be just to us. It doesn't follow that this God has to judge us. It doesn't follow that this God is gonna take our souls, and then whatever else is gonna happen, right? So I just think it doesn't follow.
I think the simple reason is human beings invented God, and God's punishment and the eternal torture and hellfire is more it reflects certain human beings kind of sadistic psychology rather than the creator of the universe.
Well, exactly. And if you look at their founders too, because when people say that all faiths are the same, that's just blatantly false. Not all faiths are equal. Not all faiths preach the same things. So I think if you look at their founders and look at their dispositions, you can really tell a lot about the psyche of the faith too, about how it views the world, how it views women, how it views whatever. So I mean, I don't know. Just for me, I've always struggled with that. Is that even if it does exist, that doesn't mean that there's a heaven or hell. Even if it does exist, that doesn't mean that we're going to be judged afterwards. If it does exist, it doesn't mean that we're going to be coming back again to earth. So even if it does exist, I mean, it doesn't follow that therefore it's just, therefore it's quote unquote evil, therefore it doesn't care. We just.
We lose you again, TJ. You sort of go very, very soft.
I think it's. I think Haram Sheikh had the same problem once. That
I don't know what it is.
I think it's
see if you can rejoin, TJ, because we can hear you very clearly, but then you literally go so soft that I can't even turn it up.
I think it is a kind of setting in the. I don't know where.
Let me try to restart my computer actually. So I'll be back on in a couple of minutes.
Okay. I just think it is a setting.
I think TJ's got an interesting point, and I guess if I were to play devil's advocate on the theist side, one of the reasons they could bring to say why is God, let's say in some version, loving, in other words, why is he not capricious, would be that he created us. So if you sort of stepped semi into their world and went, okay, so there is this God, why would he be at least not capricious? One of the reasons possibly that they could bring is, well, he's created us. So from their point of view, why would he create us and then mock us or whatever the case may be? And so that's a defense possibly that a theist could bring to TJ's point of, he could be many other things. Yes, he could be, and they can't demonstrate that he's not, but that could be an answer for why they may say that he's sort of wanting our best interests, and I say that in inverted commas.
Well, if I can say the Nietzschean point of view, for Nietzsche, the whole concept of hellfire and punishment from God he saw it as a kind of inflated revenge fantasy. So you had people that were like very powerless and didn't have the ability or the outlet to take revenge on their enemies. So therefore they invented the concept of hellfire. And since they couldn't punish their enemies and take revenge in this life, they invented an afterlife where the Heavenly Father would take revenge on their behalf. There's a quote from Thomas of Aquinas, I think it was. There is something like, and so that, I don't remember the quote, but if someone can find it, if so, like, so the reward in heaven, part of the reward is that the righteous believers can look at the punishments of the sinners. And then he described the sinners as like the rich man who was rich in this life, he gonna see him burn in that and that way, and the charioteer with his chariot will be like in a state of like a chariot of fire or something. I don't know if anyone can find that Thomas, I think it's Thomas Aquinas quote. It would be funny. I mean, and it's a similar concept in Islam. There's an hadith that that says that like the people in heaven will be able to see the punishments of the kuffar in the hellfire.
Yes. Now, so there's 2 points. One is, for us as non-believers, we can look in and go, okay, this is a system of control. So one of the ways to keep people in this ideology is to have some kind of reward and punishment system, which we are all used to as human beings. And so that's almost like the psychological view of it.
Yeah, but look, for Nietzsche, it wasn't just only a system of control. It was not only like the main purpose of the hellfire is not necessarily to make people do what you want in the same way as like kind of Big Brother in an Orwellian world where they want to control you to follow the kind of Stalinistic system. Here it's more to the benefit of the weak individual, the individual that is because of his Nietzsche said it was because of their impotence that their hatred grew to monstrous proportions. So because they are so impotent and can't take revenge on their enemies and can't do anything, they invent an kind of almost metaphysical punishment in the hereafter. It's not metaphysical in that sense because they believe it will happen, but they invent a fantasy punishment. So they can imagine themselves, they can see these rich, successful guys that they want to take revenge on. They can see for themselves, they can imagine them burning in hellfire for eternity.
Oh yeah, I can definitely agree with you on that side of it. When I speak to people at Speaker's Corner, there is this innate need in seemingly most human beings for some kind of justice, either in this world or the next. And so they very much buy into the cosmic justice. Well, you can't get, it would be immoral if somebody got away with it, like a Hitler who did what he did, committed suicide. So in most people's views.
But I think Nietzsche said that it's more sinister than that. It's not just that they use the word justice, but is it really that they want? I think what they actually want is their own inner sadism, their own inner desire, or their envy of the rich and successful and powerful and strong has grown. That hatred and envy towards them, or the ressentiment, French word which is kind of hard to translate, that inner envy and hatred, because they are not able to be as successful, strong, and rich and everything as they are, and because these people are looking down at them and maybe spitting at them and laughing at them, and they can't take revenge because of that, it's not just enough for them to kind of punish them in this world. They need a lasting punishment that can equal their own inner psychological hatred. And so they invented this concept of hellfire.
I see what you mean. So yes, that's why they may have done it at that time. I mean, today you wouldn't have anybody saying that really today, because you've got obviously billionaire Christians and so forth, or Muslims or whatever the case is. But I could see why the downtrodden, let's say, 1,000 years ago or whenever this was, supposed to have happened,
But I think
why
this
they would have
exists
done
today
that.
too. I think you see this especially in like some ISIS guys and so on. I think you see this hatred, this extreme form of ressentiment. I also like what this is more speculative because I can't read their minds. But sometimes when I listen to some feminists, for example, I can see that same kind of you can almost see the hellfire behind their eyes in their how strong their ressentiment and their hatred is. So it's almost as they wish all the people that they hate so much to burn in hellfire forever, and they are extremely moralistic in the same way as religious people once upon a time was moralistic. So I think there's almost a secular version of this.
Yeah, but they want to also impose their morality on other people and make them follow it as well. So
but that's what they do
different,
always.
so,
That's what these agents always do. It's just that it takes different form. Once upon a time, it took the form of Christianity, and that kind of that extreme hatred took the form of that. And then later, maybe you had like the Khmer Rouge, for example.
I would say the French Revolution, actually.
French Revolution was also similar, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think a very good example is Khmer Rouge, if you're not familiar with the
Pol Pot, right?
history. Yeah.
Pol Pot, yeah.
There were also like these peasants that had this extreme ressentiment, hatred against the. I think you can see this in many socialists.
Yeah, they still have that value of compassion.
Yeah, but is it really compassion, or is it rather this hateful envy?
But would you say that's the case today, though? Because I can understand how that would have been the case, many years or many centuries or whatever the case is. But today, the reason why people accept that cosmic justice is important today isn't because they are looking at the rich and going, "Oh, you should be punished, surely," because that's not what I hear when I speak to people.
Oh man,
that's a
loaded question. You only knew the world is filled with hateful, resentful people. If you could read the minds of certain feminists and certain jihadists.
Very reactionary, though. It's very reactionary that if someone is successful, if someone is rich, it's because they
paint it in the language of justice and the language of equality, and but what they really want
people, and that's they're not going to get cosmic justice, are they? Unless they are at the same time believers. You get a lot of secular, feminists or whoever. And so, the cosmic justice wouldn't apply to them. That would be specifically for religious people who go, the reason why God is just is because if you don't do X, Y, and Z, there'll be eternal punishment.
In that way, I mean, feminists are even worse because they have no real outlet. For the Christian believer, when he can imagine that these rich, successful, strong guys, that they will burn in hellfire for eternity, in one way, they get a kind of outlet for their ressentiment. But the feminists and the socialists, their hatred continue to grow and continue to boil on the surface without having any real outlet, except for some resentful outbursts of protest or something. But you see what I'm saying? So they, in one way, they
we could have a show on that sort of thing, because I would have considered myself a feminist maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and having done more research. The modern feminism I wouldn't touch with a barge.
I'm not talking about all feminists. Of course, there are many people that just they have fallen for the idea of equality, which is nothing wrong. Well, I mean, it depends on what you. But I'm talking about a certain they who are the true believers, or those who are motivated by their inner ressentiment. That's the guys that I'm talking about, and you may not be able to see it on the outside. So they may paint it in all this beautiful language about equality and justice and everyone will be much happier.
Yeah.
But
Well, they just want to,
you know,
they just want to bring that whole utopia concept.
but I don't think they even wanted utopia. That's what I'm talking about. What they really want is to make the strong suffer as they are suffering. That's what they want. They want to have.
I think it's more than that. I just think they like. I think they want to bring about this sort of equality, but they want to reward mediocrity. They want to, level out society. That's what their ultimate goal is, to level out society. Through groupthink or through mob
We
like
could do a show on that. I don't want to get too distracted with feminists because that is a whole show unto itself. And seems like we're in similar agreement on that.
I'm not necessarily talking about feminists. It can be anything, but this I'm more interested in this kind of psychological phenomena.
Yeah, and from what you're saying to me, it's more a case of you believe that it was, and you're probably right, that it was originally invented by, the downtrodden, although I would have suspected the church would have been at the forefront of this, but however it happened was the downtrodden thinking, oh, well, all the rich and the powerful, etc., will burn in hell, even if they were Christian, which would be probably a bit of a challenge. But today's people, when I speak to them, they don't say that. Certainly they don't say it openly when I challenge them. The reason they say cosmic justice is important is because if people get away with something, then there's no justice in this world. So there must be justice somewhere else. So they're looking for justice for whoever it is, not necessarily the rich and powerful, but just whoever it is that they see as being, trying to get away from justice in this world. And so for them, it's totally moral and just that a God would punish people. And so
but it's two things. First, like Christianity wasn't powerful from the beginning. I mean, the early history of Christianity was really the slaves and the lower, like
class,
the lower classes and the lowest of the low. So the Christianity became powerful later, but that's another issue. We're talking about where this was born, and I think it's the same thing with many versions of socialism. So it's born out of this same psychological need. And yes, and again, they talk about justice and so on, but is it really justice they want? They also talk about forgiveness, but if you really have a kind of forgiving mindset, why this desire to see people tortured in hell? It can only come from a mind that is deeply hateful, deeply resentful. You see what I'm saying? And here I can see that's why I am more sympathetic to Buddhism, for example, because in Buddhism you don't have this same resentfulness. You have you develop what they call metta, so you develop love to everything. But you have no desire. Oh, I wish that they burn in hell or so. No, the opposite. You try to so. Although there are other issues with Buddhism, they're not that flourishing and active, but at least they're not as resentful in the same way as Christians and socialists are.
Yeah.
Not all socialists, but you see what I'm saying?
Yes. And so, from our point of view, I guess it just seems, I don't know, I don't want to speak for either of you or viewers, but it seems to me, at least, incomprehensible that, people could find a God that metes out justice in the afterlife as moral in any way. So for me, even if he existed, that would be the bar that would immediately say to him, okay, this God exists, I don't want to have anything to do with him, because if I were him or it or whatever the case is with all powerfulness that couldn't be in any way hurt, I would consider it both irrational and immoral to punish the creation that I have made that could never hurt me in any sense. And so that's immediately out the door, unless somebody can convince me. And of course the Christians come back with, he's an all-loving God, which to me is like a non sequitur. I don't understand what the words all-loving, I understand those two words separately, put them together because I've taken some time on this. and maybe one of you could explain what you think Christians mean by an all-loving God. What I think what they're supposed to mean is an unconditionally loving God, but they can't say that, because the moment they say that, of course, justice is out the window, and so a lot of the tenets then fall away, and then there's no need for sin, etc., etc. So they use this term all-loving. What does that actually mean?
The Christian concept doesn't make sense at all. I mean, I was just thinking maybe this, like in Buddhism, no, in Islam there is I think there's several hadith that says that 99.9% of all people will end up in hellfire. So God creates all these humans, and then 99.9 ends up in hellfire. I mean, is this a loving God? And I mean, in Christianity, Christianity doesn't make sense at all. But how can you be an all-loving God and punish people in hellfire?
Well, that's my question. I wish we had a Christian on, because William Lane Craig, one of the flag bearers of Christian apologetics that most people look up to, has actually said this on stage. And of course, he's been challenged, and Dawkins won't have a stage with him, etc., because he's used this. And of course, the excuse is, well, when children die, for example, they're going to a better place, which again for me is just incomprehensible that you could say that. So children can suffer, tsunamis can wipe people out, etc., yet they're going to a better place. In which case, why were they even born? They should have just gone there straight away. It's just.
I mean, I'm if you have a really if you have a kind of Schopenhauer. The view of Schopenhauer, then yes, they are going to a better place because they are relieved from suffering. But
well, why allow them suffering in the beginning then? If you're an all-loving God,
yeah, but the difference is that
completely.
Schopenhauer didn't believe in a creator God in that sense.
Right.
So
whereas humans get away with it by saying it's all a test. So for them, that answers many of those sort of questions. Life is a test. That in and of itself is immoral and irrational, but it's a separate one, and it bypasses this all-lovingness that some Christians proclaim. Once it's a test, anything can happen.
Yeah, but suffering itself is not the problem. I think that finding the meaning of the suffering, is the issue. Suffering itself is not a negative thing. You can become stronger because of it, but ultimately people struggle with the meaninglessness of suffering. So I think that's
Nietzsche said. The meaninglessness of suffering, not suffering itself, was the great curse that lay upon mankind so far.
And that's
why I agree with that.
That
I can. This is something that I have noticed in my own life. That, I mean, some of the best periods in my life has also been those periods that has been most filled of suffering and hardship. So. And some of the worst has been pretty comfortable. So it's not really it's true. It's the meaninglessness of suffering and the.
But you're not a masochist.
Well, like if you look at the Buddhist way, there you're trying to find a kind of middle way between. You're not trying to find like. You're not.
Well, if you seek it out. If you seek it out, does that make you a masochist? If you seek out suffering, does that make you a masochist?
Yeah, but you can call it that. But of course, I don't do the kind of things that like whip myself and things like that. But there are other things like I can go out. Like now it's winter, and maybe I know a day when it's very cold outside, and then okay, but you know what? I'm gonna go out. And I know I'm gonna freeze, but I'm gonna enjoy that suffering because in a way that strengthens my soul. Or I'm gonna run a marathon, and I know that it's gonna be kind of painful, but it also gives me a higher kind of happiness. That is not a hedonistic kind of happiness, but this more another level of happiness.
So it's just like going masochist, you're just simply crazy.
I mean, it's kind of like going to the gym.
Well, you can say it's crazy. What was it? Nietzsche said something like it appears for those who don't hear the music, the dance appears as madness or something like that.
Well,
I think made a good point there about the suffering itself, in the sense of, it depends what you define the word as suffering. If we, everybody knows Arnold Schwarzenegger, and like JT was about to say there with regards to the gym, most of us who go to the gym would go there and go, okay, so we're going to go through a bit of pain, and at the end we'll feel good because you've done a workout. Even if the body feels a little bit painful, you go, okay, there's something good at the end of this. But then you take
exactly.
like Schwarzenegger, who took it to the next level, because it's all a mind thing. You know what he used to say? When I went to the gym and worked out, it was like having an orgasm. Now imagine you had that mindset that you went to the gym and you're going to have an orgasm, because that's what he said. Now whether he's joking or not, he didn't seem to. That's what it sounded like. So for him, going there he didn't associate the word suffering or pain with working out. It was, for him, it was an amazing feeling. The pain, the word pain that we would use when you lift heavy weights, etc. For him, it was an orgasm. Now, whether he meant that while you were doing the actual lifting or at the end when you were completely knackered, that was his outlook. So I think,
I know exactly what he's talking about. I mean, I've been kind of athletic, or I'm partly that still, but when you do certain kinds of extreme sports, yes, it's painful. It's physically painful when you do it, but in the process you achieve a kind of higher kind of happiness that is higher than the normal hedonistic kind of happiness you get of just watching the telly and eating popcorn.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
So you're not you're not going after the pain, you're going after the endorphins.
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
the
you can try.
end
You can
result.
explain it. You probably can explain it neurologically, but
you're going after a result, aren't you? So there's a result at the end. It's not just pain for the sake of pain, and I think maybe that's the difference. We can all agree on certain things that are just suffering with no good result. So the hurting of children, or the killing, or torturing, or whatever the case is. Now, even some people try to make a case for torturing, which in principle that you might be able to make a case, but in practice, I'm not sure that you could really make a case like Harris has tried to do that. I'm not sure that you've got that.
Do you mean Sam Harris?
Yes. So the torturing, but he's using the ticking time bomb, which in principle, I think there's an argument for.
Have you
In
listened
practice, I'm not sure.
I think he has a good podcast when he interviewed David Dutch. They talk about this thing. It's kind of crappy sound, but if you want a version, I think that is a good. Anyway, yeah, but yeah.
But getting back to the morals,
Sam Harris, the thing with his, I think that is a very interesting view. I think he has an interesting view. He's like he's building it on the assumption that what should I say? Maybe we shouldn't call it hedonism, but we should call it that states of happiness is better
pleasure
than states of But I'm not sure that he's really the hedonist in the normal sense of the word, because he is also acknowledging these kind of higher states of fulfillment that I am talking about. But the difference is that you can use, even in Buddhism, that is like a kind of lower level than the Nietzschean, is less masochistic, whatever you call the word you use. But even in Buddhism, you say that you have a pain in your leg or something, you meditate on that pain, and you use that pain to give you more insight into the nature of the mind. And in Nietzsche's philosophy, you use that pain to psychologically strengthen yourself. And when was it Nietzsche? You bite off the black snake's head and laugh a laughter which is no human laughter.
Couple of quick comments here. So BJ Price has said the Book of Enoch goes into the hell concept. God allows evil people to continue so they can pile their punishments up higher, which is interesting. Silent Walker says New Year's resolution: never go to the gym. Too many orgasms.
A Book of Enoch, that's Old Testament, right?
I'm guessing, so I'm not that familiar with the Christian scriptures.
Yes, it's Old Testament.
So they can keep piling up their punishments. Yeah. So, but just to finish off, or hopefully, potentially, with the moral thing. Again, you guys have obviously read a lot. You know, I certainly subscribe at the moment to Harris's view on the moral point of view. As a non-believer, what are our morals? And very often, when I listen to my fellow non-believers in the Speaker's Corner, they tend to attempt to use some kind of moralistic, moral relativist approach. And I think the moral landscape by Harris, for me, gives a good account, and he's put this out there as a test and a challenge, and seems to have stood up pretty well as an objective, with a couple of assumptions, an objective state of affairs that we could have as non-believers, which we could then use in principle, if not in practice, as a moral system, using science as well as a couple of benchmarks. I don't know how many people have read that, but that seems to me a good version of a non-believer.
Sound weird. How can I, as a more Nietzschean guy, how can I appreciate this work of Sam Harris? But even though I still find Sam Harris approach enjoyable, I find it as an interesting point of view, and I think if you could really do that project in a real scientific way and try to understand, first of all, you have to figure out what is subjective consciousness, what is experience, and how does it work. And when you have figured out that, then you can figure out what its geometry is or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that it is geometry.
But if you are a materialist, then you believe that mind emerges from matter, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I'm not sure that I know.
Well, I don't guarantee that, but that seems to be a reasonable explanation. But I'm open to something else happening. So I guess what's the term?
Because I believe I'm more process philosophy. Because I deny matter and I deny substance as such. I think it's about process.
I mean, Nietzsche's point of view, if you want to know Nietzsche's point of view, was more like, do you know, what is it called? There's a mathematician, he worked with Bertrand Russell. What's his name?
Whitehead.
Yeah, exactly, Whitehead, exactly.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche's, his philosophy is quite similar to Whitehead, I would say. But look, I'm not sure what is true. I want to know what is true. I mean, I'm flirting with Giulio Tononi's theory, this integrated information. But I'm not saying that I know that this is true. And even if it is true, it can still be. Maybe it's you can still combine it with more panpsychists, panpsyche-ish types of philosophies. But I'm not saying that I know what is true. But anyway, what I want to say is, I think even if you are a Nietzschean, I think you still can appreciate Sam Harris' point of view, his attempt to make it scientific and to examine it with a more scientific-y approach.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, then we should have a scientific interpretation of music then. If we're going to have a scientific interpretation of morality, let's have a scientific interpretation of music.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you mean. You completely lost the point. Say that you can explain say that I'm listening to Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, and I have this a rich inner experience. Can you explain that mathematically? And yes, maybe you can explain it mathematically, but you completely lost the point.
Yeah. Well,
and if you're trying to explain,
that's why scientism, pisses me off when it's trying to go into fields that it has no.
But even if you explain it mathematically,
it's still descriptive. It's not prescriptive, right?
Yeah, you're not reaching to its essence. The essence is the experience itself.
Yeah.
JT, have you read The Moral Landscape?
I have not actually. I watched one of his lectures when he was presenting the book. I think it was on C-SPAN.
I'd be very interested in your critique of it, because obviously there's been some critique of it, and I haven't seen anything substantial that's a knockdown argument against it. But obviously, it seems like that you're certainly not on board with that, which is great. And I'd love to at some point hear your view on that. So maybe not now, but once you've read it potentially, and I'm happy to, if you send me an email, or give me your email address, I can send you a PDF that you can read, or the audio. I've got both. But I'd like your view on it. Where do you think the biggest critique would come in there?
I can actually, hold on, let me try to, just give me 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
Just give me 1 second. Yeah.
As you go there, I'll just speak here for a moment. As I say, a lot of my atheist comrades, shall we say, in Speaker's Corner attempt to put forward some kind of moral relativist position, and against, the theist who believes they have an objective moral guidance from a creator. It doesn't seem to stand up well. Now, it could be that they just don't have a more nuanced view of it, but to me, moral relativism doesn't seem to be justified. And from what I understand, there's very few philosophers or any big thinkers, let's call it, that subscribe to that view.
I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat box so you can take a look at it.
There we go. Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah.
I'll pop that onto the other chat for other people to view, so that
maybe we can have a whole program just for that, so everyone can read the moral landscape. And
yeah, that would be awesome. I mean,
because it's a huge subject.
It is, and again, I want to find out what's true, and whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable, and if there's a knockdown argument against that, then I'd want to know that. And obviously, I'll put that to Harris and send him an email and go, because he put out a challenge, and then he had Russell Blackford, I think it is, a philosopher in Australia, work, so that he didn't make the choice as to which was the best essay to counter him. This was then read, and then he did a counter. You can find it all on the blog. And again, I read all of that, and I went, okay, so there's been some interesting critique here, but there's certainly no knockdown argument that I'm aware of that knocks that. But JT, obviously, you're not a materialist, so it'd be good to hear your views on it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if you're going to look towards individual thinkers, I would probably start with Heraclitus for sure. I look at David Hume, specifically his team, or the Is-Ought problem. And then
yes, which of course Harris sort of goes, that Is-Ought problem is a non-problem as long as you focus on well-being, because scientific facts reduce to values, and he's got a whole argument around why that's the case. So he puts us, obviously addresses Hume's thing, because it's a big thing that everybody, he feels, is falling into that trap. And as soon as you focus on well-being and you accept a couple of seemingly uncontroversial assumptions, but again, you might have an argument against that, you can bypass the Hume Is-Ought distinction.
Also the problem of induction as well from Hume. And then if you go to Schopenhauer, obviously his philosophy of irrationalism, particularly of the concept of the will, you're the drive that you have inside of you. And just look at because when I look at rationalism, it's forgetting about the internal drives that make up the human, and how those drives to dominate, your sexual drive, hunger, thirst, and all these things, how these take precedence over reason. So reason will always be subject to passions. So I think that's the one thing, and that's why ultimately in my view, that's why the Enlightenment project failed, because it understand that what is the essence of it. That's why it failed.
I lost you again, TJ.
Sorry, I was saying that that whole reason versus passion, or reason versus will, or whatever you want to call it, reason versus your drives, or whatever you want to call it. I think that argument is still being done, but I think that ultimately that's why the Enlightenment failed, because it did not understand that reason is always subject to the drives or the passions. So reason will always be a subordinate, no matter what.
No, I've lost you again, TJ. You've gone soft again.
I'm sorry, I don't know what to do.
We can't hear you.
I wonder what that problem is.
I mean, he's clear when he's coming through. It's just
Haram Sheikh had this problem also.
Quick message there from the chat. Silent Walker says the moral landscape has a flaw. The participants need to agree what is right and wrong. And Sarah and Harris addresses this by basically saying the well-being of conscious creatures should be taken as a priori or a foundational. and anybody who disagrees with that is welcome to put forward something else. But basically, he assumes and puts an argument forward that you need to accept the well-being of conscious creatures, and if you have any other thing, and along with consciousness, our conscious minds in a conscious universe, in a materialistic universe or naturalistic universe, put that together with the well-being of conscious creatures, you have a foundation for morals that nobody can disagree with, essentially. And so that's his position, because I know that's the main objection against Harris's position as well.
Yeah, he bases this on a premise.
Say again?
He bases it on a premise that feel that conscious states of what he called well-being is better.
Well, the well-being of conscious creatures is your yardstick, for want of a better word. And
yeah, but he bases it in subjective experiences. I mean,
but he does that to a point. But he says, obviously, we don't have a completed neuroscience or scientific view. But if we did, we could then use science as a tool to find out whether it really is right or wrong, per se. So but there's a lot more to the book than that, obviously. But yes, of course, part of it is that.
Maybe we should devote a whole show to this.
Yes,
but my short answer that I think he should look into more the necessity of suffering in. This is a long topic.
Yeah, I think.
I think you can even if you don't agree completely with someone's view, you can still enjoy it in a way. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, because I think we as non-believers need to have a coherent moralistic view, whatever that might be, and to say that it changes with the society, we're better now than we have been. I'm not sure that that's defendable unless there's a lot more that's put around that, and that's kind of what
I mean is that even if you don't agree with Sam Harris's arguments completely, it can still be an interesting view to examine, and maybe you can learn something from it anyway. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, definitely, and especially somebody like JT, who's critical, and Silent Walker here as well, with a couple of comments. I think is also sort of critical of that. That's the sort of thing where you can have that a different view, which is obviously what I want to hear. What is your criticisms, and is there a knockdown or a really strong counter to whatever a claim may be?
But don't you think that Muslims make this huge big mistake of thinking there is something objective?
Well, what they mean by objective, from where I can understand, is that there's an objective God, which is the objective source of morals. What the morals are is obviously, I guess you could say, subjective to his will, but objective to us.
God,
so he's the
God
objective.
Is the truth. This is even one of his attributes.
It seems coherent in their worldview. Obviously, for us,
it is coherent in a way. I mean, it's coherent.
There are no absolutes. I reject that.
It's coherent in the same way. Say that I make a mathematical model of something that isn't a model of anything in real. Yes, it's consistent as an abstract object, but it has nothing to do with reality. So in the same way, yes, it's consistent in a way, but there's nothing to do with reality.
But does Sam Harris say that there is something objective, or is it all relative?
No, he tries to get to a kind of objective-ish morality based on the premise that subjective experiences of well-being is better than subjective experiences of suffering, and so
right, okay.
But even that is relative.
Yeah, exactly. No, he goes much more than that. Otherwise, that would be a knockdown against him. I don't think so. There's three things that I understand, and again, I will reread it as well. One is that you accept that the well-being of conscious creatures is the standard, as in like the yardstick. Number two, that you accept that we have conscious brains that have experiences in the natural world, and that science can, in principle, if not in practice, get input into those, so be it neuroscience or whatever the case may be. And number three, that you accept that some people have got better and some people have got worse lives. And of course, he uses the examples in the book of a woman running through the jungle with killers in pursuit and somebody who's a billionaire having the most wonderful life. And if you accept that that one is better than the other, and those other two premises, then you have an objective morals that you can in principle use, not in practice. And one of his big things is a lot of people confuse what you can do in principle versus what you can do in practice.
I mean, this is what, like, someone like, what is better? Like, you assume that the billionaire lifestyle is better, but here's what, like, someone that, like Nietzsche, could say that, no, actually, the most fulfilled lives are lives that are full of suffering. So it's not the, like, suffering is an essential component to a fulfilled life.
But you need to make a good argument, because Harris dismisses that out of hand, and I would too, my own personal opinion, having thought about it. Somebody who brings that argument, and he uses health as an example. So your point on Nietzsche, I'm sure Nietzsche wouldn't bring it, but if somebody were to bring that sort of thing and go, hey, do you know what? Suffering is what the height of, in inverted commas, well-being is. We can dismiss that virtually immediately unless they can bring substantial argument to go, yes, no, actually this is better and here's why it's better, here's the evidence.
No, because you see it on you. What he means that you don't zoom out and see the whole picture. If you could see the whole picture and zoom out, then there's a long story. And I'm not saying that, as I said, I still think Sam Harris's view is interesting, and I think you should pursue that as a kind of scientific project to investigate it, because there's nothing to lose.
Yes, and if there's some holes in there or there's some problems, then obviously that would be interesting, because he does admit two things. One is that he takes a version of consequentialism and a version of realism, i.e. things can be really true or false, and there are consequences in the world. And yes, those do have objections to them, which he does note, obviously, as well. So it's not like it's a perfect system, and he's happy to sort of admit that. We're getting towards almost 2 hours, so a question for people in here: should we wrap this up, or should we go through the video? Because even if it's a short video, I suspect it would take at least half hour or 40 minutes to go through and to critique it. So I guess the question is it worth it? Have people got time? Do they want to? Or should we wrap the show and I could do the video next time? What's the opinion?
Maybe we can take it next time. I think I don't know. I made some claims last week that I wanted to correct, but I don't know if there's time for that. It was like rambling about like scientific stuff.
I think somebody's mic is kicked in. TJ Stops, what is your thoughts?
I don't mind if we continue.
I'm easy, but it could be too much for people who are watching. Like later the recording.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know about you. Again, this is my first time, so you give me your thoughts. I'm not so sure many people will watch the recording. I'd rather get, if people are interested here in the chat, if you can put in whether you'd want us to review, which is seemingly a short video, but by the time we've done a review and other people have had their, we've had comments in here, we could run for another 30 or 40 minutes here probably. So it's a case of, do the live people who are watching now want us to go?
I mean, it doesn't really matter. We can, I think.
I'm not too fussed about whether people will actually watch 2.5 hours or whatever the case is.
What was your video about again?
So the video is, I'll tell you now, and in fact, I'll post it in the link so people can get hold of it themselves. It's called Arrogant Atheist Gets Schooled by Muslim, Hyde Park, which is, yes, it's interesting in and of itself. Here's the video itself, so you can go and watch it at your leisure anyway, because I wasn't going to go through the entire video.
Wouldn't that be a topic in itself?
Yeah.
Could be. I think you're right. This could actually, if it's a 24-minute video, maybe let's do it next time, because it's a 24-minute video, but I actually focused on a particular part, starting at sort of around about 4 minutes, when Shabir starts talking to this sort of shorter white guy, because he starts talking to Isaac, who's the black sort of kickboxer in Speaker's Corner, who's wonderful. He's your entertainer. If you watch Isaac, the black guy with the sort of peak cap and the glasses, he's your entertainer, but he's not a serious guy that you'd have a discussion with. And so at about 4 minutes, Shabir starts talking to this young white fella, as you listen to him, you can immediately hear he's got some kind of philosophical training. He's got some, he's sort of a bit of a smarter guy, certainly from the people that I listen to. Now, that doesn't say a lot. Maybe the bar is quite low at Speaker's Corner, which I'm totally okay with. But this young fella starts to speak to him at about 4 minutes, and I ran for something like 4 minutes until about 9 or 10 minutes. So actually it's only about 6 or 7 minutes of that video, but people can watch that, and maybe next time we can come back, because then each of you that are interested can go and make a few notes on that particular thing, because that would be the part. I don't want to focus on Isaac. I'd rather focus on Shabir having that conversation with Philip, who's the white guy in that video, at about starting around 4 minutes.
Very good thing to start next show with.
Okay, yeah. Watch the whole thing for entertainment, because Isaac is great. He's a great entertainer, but he's not a serious debater. He's not a critical thinker, or got any philosophical training from what I can see. So he presses Muslims on, how can they believe, flying, horses and the moon split in two. And, if you go watch him, he's fun to watch. He's absolutely fun to watch. He doesn't answer any of their questions. He's able to dodge their questions quite artfully, which I can't do. I have to say, when somebody asks me a question, I tend to want to answer it immediately. But I notice that, if you don't want to, that's quite a skillful thing to avoid doing. And he's quite good at that.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
but then next time being Friday, or do you want what have you decided on?
I'm quite happy to do Friday as a test next time. So for everybody listening here, so we'll run the show at Friday 8 p.m. UTC. Friday 8 p.m. UTC. I'll put a stops if you can just add Abu in as a sub account. I'll set up the next Jinn Tonic show for Friday 8 p.m. That's what date is that? Going to be Friday the 16th. Friday the 16th at 8 p.m. Friday 16th December, 8 p.m. UTC.
Okay, I don't know what happens if I now log in as a Jinn Tonic show, so I'd rather not.
Oh, wait for me to finish it then, because I don't think I can do that. So maybe
you should be able to do it, because I set you up as owner.
Oh, okay. Then I might be able to do that. That's fine.
And then what I will do now is, because we need to propagate this, because did you send something out on Twitter today?
No, I haven't done anything on Twitter. No, I haven't done anything. I've been out the whole day.
Because a lot of people actually react to that, maybe because it ends up on their phones or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So I will send up, Friday, when?
I'll put it into the main chat. Friday, 16th December, 8 p.m. UTC. Then
I will propagate this on Twitter.
Okay, perfect. And then I'll set up a scheduled show that we can just log into, and we just copy and paste.
Wait a minute. Friday 18th.
Is it 18th? Sorry, let me just check.
16th, I think.
The 16th, yeah, 16th. Friday the 16th of December. So essentially 5 days time, basically. And then we'll start with this video. So those people who are interested, watch this video. You guys that are going to come in and do some critique as well, if you can watch, particularly that 6 minutes. I'll just start the video so people get a sense of it. But then I want to focus on, because that 6 or 7 minutes, that will take up a good hour or more of the show just doing that. Because I've literally deconstructed this, that time period with sentence by sentence, because some of it's a little bit difficult to hear. And so I went back and I listened, and I've got a whole Word document here that I can go through about literally, and I can, quote what they're being saying, and then I've got a few comments. So with your input, it will easily take up an hour just on that, 6 or 7 minutes.
Can I quickly correct some things I said last week?
Go ahead, yep.
Okay, so we were just kind of rambling about Neanderthal DNA, so I just checked up some fact. And I was wrong about one thing. So we're talking about math skills, and then we were talking about Japanese and Korean guys. And I said that they have slightly less Neanderthal DNA than Europeans, but actually they seem to have slightly more than Europeans. And they also have some Denisovan DNA. Another fact that the further back in time you go, the percentage of Neanderthal DNA seem to increase. So you have, for example, Ötzi, the Iceman, his Neanderthal, he had higher percentage. And then I said about these things like probably red hair comes from Neanderthals, Actually, it's more likely that it doesn't. It evolved separately in Homo sapiens quite late, the latest 20,000 years. It may be that it comes from Neanderthals, but it's more likely that it's evolved separately later. I said that this Labrania guy was 9,000 years old. He's actually 7,000 years old. That is most similar to today's Scandinavians, Labrania. And I found, like, I was looking at this math skill guy, Ashkenazi Jews, how I couldn't find how high percentage they had of Neanderthal DNA, but what I did find was kind of interesting that they seem mostly to come from European converts, especially on the female line. So they were most similar to ancient Romans, which is kind of interesting. They are actually mostly European, especially on the female line, seem to come from Europe. So I suppose they have a higher Neanderthal percentage. And also Southern Europeans in general have a higher percentage of Neanderthal DNA than Northern Europeans. The word Arya consists of two words. Ari means enemy, Ya means like overcomer. So yeah, conqueror is maybe a good translation. Yeah, so that was it. I also found a journalist that had 5% Neanderthal DNA. So I don't know who is the world champion of Neanderthal DNA alive today. Probably the Swedish Prime Minister, if you haven't seen him.
No, I haven't.
Okay, you can look up pictures of him.
Great stuff. Thank you, Abu. Thank you, everybody, for a show. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on and making the show worthwhile. Obviously, to sit and talk and do it all by yourself is not as interesting. And anybody else that's in the chat, if you in future want to join in, you've got a mic and you'd like to join in, feel free to do that. So we'll resume again on Friday the 16th of December at 8 p.m. UTC. We'll start with introductions and so forth, and then we'll get into reviewing this video link that I've put into the main chat. And I sent you a message there as well, Abu, if you can just email me your email address. I don't have a hadith of the day.
Can you stay on the show afterwards and we can talk a little bit?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
Or I can just post the email address.
And thanks, Rob, for chipping in and saving the show, sorry.
Yep, perfect. No, anytime. Thanks for coming on as well, Stops. Appreciate you being here.
Okay, guys. See you next week then. Friday.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Did you want to carry on here?
I'm just going to post the email address.
Oh, just in the thing. Okay, I'll pick that up.
I think we're still live.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if I stop broadcast, can we? Does the group chat still work?
Yes, it should. I believe so. Yes.
Did you get the email address?
I have got it there. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, I'll send you a link then. Thanks so much, guys. I'm going to stop the broadcast. If you need anything else, then obviously we can speak on email.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.